Good afternoon, and we are excited to have you here today. I want to thank a number of folks that are with us that we'll hear from and those that are in the audience. Obviously, for all of his vision, leadership, and support, President Zach Klein, Chairman Mitch Brown, and all of City Council, our Safety Director Ned Pettus, Deputy Director George Speaks, our Chief of Police Kim Jacobs, Mark Fester from the FOP, members of the Body-Worn Camera Committee that helped us put in place the policies that have helped to guide our work, Jason Stuzinski, who's Vice President with WatchGuard, our Finance Director Joe Lombardi, and Technology Director Sam Orth that are here that helped make this day possible. We have another great reason to celebrate this season in Central Ohio. Yesterday, after countless hours and hours of careful deliberation, research of policies and procedures, meetings, testing, negotiations, training, infrastructure enhancement, and identification of resources to support all of the above, the Columbus Division of Police deployed the first body-worn cameras. I have said it before, and I want to say it again. It was most important for us to get this done right. I stand here confident we have accomplished that. We know from all of the research, and I think you'll hear some personal experiences shared with you today, the body-worn cameras make it safer for people on both sides of the camera. Research shows that body-worn cameras are an important tool to enhance public safety and promote more positive interactions between the police and the community. They improve trust between the police and the residents they serve and have been statistically proven to reduce use of force by officers and reduce citizen complaints against officers. They have also been shown to be a tremendous tool in the prosecution of criminal cases. There were many internal and external partners in the journey to get us where we are today. A body-worn camera committee was formed with members of the community, academia, the Fraternal Order of Police, and support staff from the Department of Public Safety. That committee spent untold hours of research, engaged in public meetings, took testimony from a myriad of experts. They had diverse opinions and lively discussions. In the end, they developed recommendations for policies, procedures, and necessary changes in state law to implement a body-worn camera program in Columbus, which might also serve as a template for law enforcement throughout the state of Ohio. At the same time, the city's procurement experts led an intense vendor selection process and ultimately chose 6 models from 5 different vendors for a test program. This past August, 30 officers working a variety of assignments volunteered to test the cameras and identified strengths and weaknesses of each vendor. Their input informed the city's decision to select a vendor and enter into a contract with the world's largest, and we believe the best, manufacturer of law enforcement video systems, WatchGuard. And as I mentioned before, Jason Stuzinski, Vice President of WatchGuard, is here, and we'd like to thank him for his great work and partnership in this important initiative. Simultaneously, the city also worked with the Fraternal Order of Police to plan for implementation and assure new policies did not conflict with the collective bargaining agreement. My thanks to the FOP, especially Mark Fester, who is with us here today, for their involvement in the process and ultimate agreement with the city. Without this spirit of cooperation, this initiative would not have come to fruition. I want to thank the officers in our Traffic Enforcement Division who volunteered to be the first to be outfitted with the WatchGuard body cameras during this initial deployment phase. You are blazing the trail for the remainder of our first responders in the Division of Police. I'm a little biased, but I believe we have the best Division of Police in America. But the way you remain the best is to continue to lead and be on the cutting edge of using new technology and innovation to help serve and protect people that we are sworn to protect. The people of Columbus deserve the very best, and we believe this process and the use of body-worn cameras will continue to make it safer for our officers and the people of Columbus. Lastly, I want to thank the many partners that have provided research, time, energy, and resources to bring this project to where we are today. The Department of Public Safety, the Division of Police led by Director Ned Pettus, the Department of Technology, Director Sam Orth, the Department of Finance, Director Joe Lombardi, and Columbus City Council providing support of this project. Our great partners in City Council, led by President Zach Klein and Chairman Mitch Brown, have been instrumental in getting us to this point here today, and we are grateful for their partnership and support. It's now my honor to introduce Council President Zach Klein.
Thank you to Mayor Ginther, and I do want to echo the many thanks that the mayor has outlined for city personnel, all the departments that were involved, as well as citizen personnel, the folks that spent the time volunteering as part of the Citizen Committee for body-worn cameras and the countless hours they put in, as well as the Fraternal Order of Police. And Mark, who is here, FOP came to the table as a willing participant, and we're grateful that you did this because this is an important step in the right direction to improve police-community relations in the city of Columbus. I agree with Mayor Ginther that we have the best sworn personnel that put their lives on the line every single day to protect us. And body-worn cameras, I think, are an important step, not a panacea, but an important step in the right direction to continue to build accountability and transparency between the community and police. It's important to echo what Mayor Ginther said, that this is not a one-way street of just police accountability. This is a two-way street. It's about holding police accountable and holding the community accountable, and video footage doesn't lie, and this is an important step in the right direction, and I'm grateful that the FOP recognized this and came to the table as a willing participant because we do have great men and women that, like I said, put their lives on the line every single day. I'd like to also recognize the person that I look up to on public safety issues, and that's my colleague, Councilmember Mitch Brown. Thank you for being the steward that you were as the safety director, and now as a public safety expert and my colleague on Columbus City Council. As Mayor Ginther outlined, this is an important step in the right direction. But we still need to continue to work hard on public records issues in order for this to be, I think, the best policy for the city of Columbus. If you will recall, the Ohio Supreme Court's recent ruling in the case of Cincinnati Enquirer versus Ohio Department of Public Safety, the crux of that case said that the significance of the Ohio Supreme Court ruling in the Cincinnati Enquirer case is that entire video footage is not exempt from public records laws because it might contain potential evidence of criminal activity that may aid in subsequent prosecution. And thus, law enforcement agencies from across the state of Ohio will need to commit additional time and staff to review footage and determine what specific portion, if any, of the video contains what is a current exception to public record laws. That means that we need additional resources. And as council, Mayor Ginther, we stand ready to provide the resources that are necessary in order to make sure that for public records purposes and for members of the media and the members of the public, because this is simply not a courtroom tool solely. It is a courtroom tool for demonstrative evidence for a jury and for prosecutors and defense lawyers to use, but it's also for the matter for the public to be able to gain access to these public records, and we stand ready as a council to provide the resources that are necessary to cull through the countless hours that are soon to be available of public records and video footage related to body-worn cameras. We also need to implore and continue to advocate at the state legislature for changes in public records laws. Under the current policies that I support by the City of Columbus, the discretion lies with the police officer under the uniform manual of whether he or she should turn on their camera. That's a high burden for police. You think about what goes through their head every time they interact with a member of the public, and the type of protocols and standard operating procedures that they must go through, the mental checklist. It is a high burden to make sure that they keep us safe as a community, but also to keep them safe. One thing that should not be on that checklist is whether they should turn on or off their camera. But under current Ohio public record laws, that's the way it's got to be. So we need changes at the Ohio legislature to make sure that we take that burden away from police officers so that we can run the camera footage all times and then be able to redact as necessary under new laws the necessary privacy issues that need to be addressed. So I asked the state legislature to work with cities that are implementing body cameras, be happy to work with my friends in the legislature to do that, but that shouldn't be a burden on police. The burden is so high for them already, and so we really need to have the changes so that we can ensure that police officers are doing what they do best, and that's keeping us safe and keeping them safe. Again, congratulations, Mayor Ginther. This is a wonderful initiative. It's been no secret that I've been a proponent of this technology as one of the first steps that we need to do, not only in Ohio and in Columbus, but across the country to improve police-community relations. And I look forward to working with you and Director Pettus, who I would like to bring to the podium now. Thank you.
Thank you, Council President Klein, Mayor Ginther. First, I'd like to echo the gratitude that has already been expressed here, but I especially thank Mayor Ginther, Council President Klein, Safety Chair Mitchell Brown, all of City Council, and our partners in the department directors who have helped us to get to where we are today. I want to give a special shout out to Deputy Director George Speaks, who has worked tirelessly for a year and a half on this project and coordinating all of the different contributions that were made by the different committee members. Yesterday, we began deployment of body-worn cameras within the Columbus Division of Police Traffic Bureau. 12 officers volunteered to be part of this initial deployment, which we expect will assure successful implementation as more officers will be outfitted by the end of January, completing phase 1 of the deployment. And as with all new technology, no matter how much vetting, testing, and problem solving has taken place, there may still be minor glitches. Phase 2, which consists of our bicycle unit, will begin deployment once the installation of our fiber optics communication infrastructure is completed in our police substations. The fiber optics allows the officers to transmit the camera footage from the police substations to our video storage servers. The last substation to be outfitted with fiber optics is Substation 6, which is scheduled to be completed by the end of May. During this time, we will continue to train our officers and public records unit in our policy, the operation of the WatchGuard camera, and the operation of the software. Likewise, our public records unit will become more familiar with both the camera software and the redaction software. This interim will also allow us to better gauge 2 items that we can now only estimate. The first consideration is the amount of storage space required to store the video footage. The second is the amount of resources it takes to respond to public records requests. As Council President Klein just stated, the resources needed to respond to public records requests undoubtedly just increased given the Ohio Supreme Court's recent ruling. Once these variables are more defined by the initial deployments, we will have a better gauge as to the resources and time needed to finalize the remaining 7 phases of the deployment. At this time, I'd like to call Chief Jacobs.
Good afternoon. First of all, I want to thank Mayor Ginther, Council President Klein, Director Pettus, Safety Chair Mitchell Brown, and the entire leadership within the city. Again, also the officers that have volunteered for this. We are making a step forward, and it's definitely a new tool that this agency will have, not just within the agency itself, the organization of the Columbus Division of Police, but within the city. I also thank Director Speaks for his personal involvement and countless hours of preparing us for this deployment. It couldn't be done without all of the different departments working together. And it takes a lot of organizing, and so that was an excellent job of making sure that we were following best practices. So the organizational philosophy of using such a recording system is a recognition that the interactions with the police, especially during enforcement activities, are often stressful, rapidly evolving, and result in an outcome that may involve disagreeable words, injury, arrest, or even death. Interactions in many other environments between people don't have such dramatic results or impact police and community relationships as do the ones that occur when police officers are doing their duties. But all interactions of people, whether good or bad, leave the parties with differing viewpoints and perceptions of what happened. If you add the unknown or add the known shortcomings of recall and memory and the frequent presence of impaired senses or adrenaline's effects during police encounters, that means that there are many different accounts of the same incident. In the interest of getting to the truth and providing transparency, the division's use of recording systems goes a long ways towards identifying if the situation was handled lawfully, professionally, and correctly by the officer. Such evidence may assist a judge, jury, a suspect, a lawyer, or division supervisors with their decisions, as well as provide insight to the community. The Columbus Division of Police is committed to being progressive, trustworthy, and community-minded organization. We hold ourselves to high standards for which we are all accountable. Recording most of our daily interactions with community members is an excellent method to prove that the commitment and to show the outstanding service and dedication of our law enforcement personnel. Now, I want to talk briefly about what our community members may want to know about what our officers are wearing, where they're going to be wearing them, and how it may affect them. We have a very strong policy that follows the best known practices, which will dictate how our officers will use the cameras and how the division will use the video. The policy is based on providing transparency interactions and creating evidence of what our officers did in the many situations they face each day. As residents encounter officers, they can expect their interactions to be recorded in almost all instances. We believe this is a very reasonable policy designed to help us get to the facts in our contacts with community members and based on public expectations. The policy will be enforced with training and discipline if and when necessary. The agreement with the union that was referenced means that officers may review the recording of an incident before they complete a report or make a statement. Though some people and groups oppose this practice, we believe it is appropriate for several reasons. Number one, in Ohio, officers have the same rights as citizens to review existing public records. Two, as with all people, memory and recollection are subject to many factors, but most people never have to write down an official report of what they saw or did, or give statements or testimony about what happened at work. Because our personnel do this very important work all the time, they will be able to not only document what they recall, but would also include information that the camera recorded that they may have missed or not understood. This is helpful to getting to the facts. It is designed to prevent mistakes and to improve our effectiveness. Residents may be uncomfortable with an officer's recording during what to them is a very traumatic situation or a private matter. We have tried to take these concerns into account by allowing for some very limited and thoughtful discretion to be used by our personnel and supervisors. Though we use our training and de-escalation skills to prevent trouble from occurring, we never know what incident may go from very low-key to life-threatening, so we will err on the side of recording most everything. Residents also will not be able to dictate when an officer records or not. Access to these recordings will generally not be immediate due to state laws that require us to redact certain information, and thus our public records personnel, not the officers who recorded the incident, must review the entire video to determine if redactions must take place. Our team is being increased in size to prepare public records, and to assist the prosecutor's office with indefinite increase in video to be used in court cases. We will do our best to provide these records in a timely manner. However, we don't have enough staff to work 24/7. This new tool requires our veterans to learn new muscle memory regarding turning on the unit, many times while also trying to remain safe and keep their attention tuned to the actions that are going on around them. Our goal is to make this second nature to them, but we have added a 60-second look back in case something happens suddenly and they must take action before being able to turn on the camera. Here are also some limitations that it's important for our community to understand. A camera records. It does not see. It does not feel. It can't track eye movement of the officer wearing the camera. It does not have police training, and it also cannot record thoughts or intentions. A camera cannot detect cues that a person may exhibit, including the tensing of an arm or other signs of an impending attack. A camera pointed in one direction, even with a wide field of view, does not capture all that is going on in the presence of our officers. A camera does not always record definitive proof of how something actually occurred. All you have to do is look at the controversial calls at most football games where 5 camera angles still don't prove whether it was a fumble or a catch or an interception or something else. All of the cameras in the world can't give us definitive proof. The speed of recording also is in frames per second. It is not the speed of life. It is also may not factor action and reaction times as they actually occur. Lighting can also be a factor in capturing images that the officer may or may not be able to see. This will be demonstrated in the videos that I will show you at the conclusion of my remarks. The view of the camera may be blocked unintentionally by the officer's body or actions. It may be displaced or fall off through no fault of the officer. Judging distance on video is difficult due to it being recorded in 2D, not 3 as the officer sees. Threat levels, or whether or not there was an actual contact, may be impossible to determine. According to the United States Supreme Court case Graham v. Connor, an officer's decisions in tense, uncertain, and rapidly evolving situations are not to be judged with the 20/20 vision of hindsight. That's a quote. But camera footage provides an almost irresistible temptation for reviewers to play the woulda, coulda, shoulda game. People who use the video to judge an officer's actions can infinitely replay the action, scrutinize it for hard-to-see detail, slow it down, and freeze it. It is important to understand that the officer had to assess what he or she was experiencing while it was happening and under the stress of his or her life potentially being on the line. That disparity can lead to far different conclusions. While there certainly are some limitations and a lot of complex issues to solve and to continue to learn about, we are committed to bringing this new technology to our city with a goal of improving safety and transparency. As critical incidents occur, we will strive to provide important information to our community and share video in a manner that respects Ohio Public Records Law, the criminal justice system, the rights of our own personnel to fair, thorough, and impartial investigations, and our community members who justly expect accountability and professional behavior by division personnel. Now I'm going to discuss 3 videos. 2 were captured by our freeway patrol officers in the last couple of days, and 1 we recorded in training a week ago. You don't hear anything because we had to redact her social security number being given. Let me just make a few points. I mentioned that we redacted the audio there. You didn't hear her give the officer her social security number. That is a version of the original. The original never goes away, much as we might have to take information out of something that we provide to the public or whoever else. There will always be an original that does include that audio. So we are not able to change that. That's one of the things that you have to understand. Also, we are able to make these snippets shorter than they actually were. That officer spent a little bit of time in his cruiser before he got back out of the car. So we just did that for your purposes today. Right. You can see the blurred screen inside the cruiser. We're not allowed to release leads information that records the information that is in the database for driver's licenses and social security numbers, et cetera.
Somebody east of 33. I'm sorry, somebody westbound, west 33. Something like that. Looks like Lincoln John King 619.
So it's going to happen again, but if you'll notice, when the officer points his flashlight into the back seat of that car, there's a big reflection that occurs, right? Well, that's what the camera is recording. The officer can actually see into the back seat because he has the ability to see. The camera is just recording, and because of the nature of cameras, the light is going to reflect back and make it very difficult for the camera to record what's in the back seat, even though the officer can actually see. So just imagine that there's somebody sitting back there with a gun, gunfight breaks out, and you're wondering, why did the officer fire? You didn't see anything. It may or may not ever get recorded because of the lighting conditions, and we think it's important they understand the difference between being able to see and what a camera is able to record.
80, 65. What was I doing though? Speeding. 80 miles an hour, 65. Okay. Where you coming from? He's out of town. Okay. Where you headed to? I'm down here on the west side. Do you have a driver's license on you? No, I don't. Why aren't you wearing the shoes? I'm comfortable. Comfortable? Yeah. Okay. Where's the driver's license at? I don't have none on me. Do you have a driver's license? Where, Ohio? Okay. Are you from South Carolina? Okay. Do you have a South Carolina driver's license? Like you don't have it on you or you don't have a valid driver's license? I don't have a valid driver's license. Okay. Shut your car off. What about you, man? You have a driver's license? Why isn't he driving? Okay. Well, come on out, sir. Right now, by law, you're under arrest for driving vehicle without a valid driver's license. That's what I mean. What's that? You're still driving, sir. No, I'm not. You're behind the steering wheel. Okay, we're going to
All right, and the last video is one that we recorded during training. We put the cameras on the recruits as they went through some scenarios, and this is one of the tools, one of the ways we're going to be able to use this new tool to increase our ability to give feedback to our recruits, our trainees, our veterans, actually, on what to do, what not to do, review what they did, capture what they said. It's also a great example, I believe, of our attempt to try to de-escalate some things, and also action and reaction time. So here we go. He's holding a gun to his head.
There's no other victims in here, right? It's just me, right? So I can hurt nobody else except myself. Yes. So the best thing to do is try to make your way out to the door. Yes. Out to the door and use that as cover. Maybe the big frame of the door, use it as cover, and keep me up in here, talk to me, right? Talk to me, sir, you know what? I mean, you did a good job trying to talk to me, but you went totally next to the table. Yes. So go somewhere where you have some protection. If it ends up being a barricade, that's okay, right? He's by himself, there's nobody else to hurt. We can all swap, take the time to figure out, hey, talk to him. It might take a while, but no need to put yourself in here and become a victim, because guess what? Action is faster than what? Reaction, right? So doing this is a lot quicker than you being able to react. Yes, sir. So if you go out that door and you have that barrier at the door to react, you might give you an extra 30 seconds or half a second without getting hit straight on, without any type of barrier. Yes, sir. Okay.
So just a great example of how we can get some feedback to our recruits, our trainees, and discuss scenarios in a way that they can see how they performed as well. So I'm going to now turn it over to Officer Rob Barrett, who is one of our volunteers that's out there. He'll explain a little bit about how he's learned to use the equipment in just this short time, and what his experiences have been. So thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Rob Barrett. I'm with the Second Shift Freeway Patrol in the Traffic Bureau. Been an officer for approximately 25 years. I'd like to thank Mayor Ginther, President Klein, Director Brown, former Director Brown, Director Pettus, and Chief Jacobs for their insight into this program. A big thanks to Director Speaks, who forefronted this program the entire time. He did a lot of research, answered a lot of calls from him. He was a very good resource and everything else. The cameras are going to affect officers, make them a little bit safer. We're going to be using them not only as to document evidence, but also to provide training for our future generations of officers. Veteran officers like myself only have a little bit more time on the division. This is going to benefit the city for years and years to come. So what we're learning right now is how we can better train our officers to de-escalate, to be upfront and transparent, and to document the evidence that we need for successful prosecutions and everything else. The camera is easy to wear, it's easy to activate, it's a simple one-button activation. Officers have the ability to dim the lights in a tactical situation, to turn the lights off from the camera, so there's no officer safety issues along with them, so they can be used in total dark situations where we may get some good training and some good feedback and some good evidence. I found that the camera is very easy to use, one-button operation, easy classification. The classifications of the videos after the fact are very easy to do and will be able to be handled by all members of the division. I was one part of this program several years ago when we started doing the research on these body cameras, and we wanted to get a camera system that would benefit not only the citizens of Columbus, but the officers as well. The committee spent numerous hours interviewing multiple officers, multiple vendors, and I personally would like to thank the committee members and the leadership of the city of Columbus for listening to the facts of the officers, listening to our recommendations, what our responses are, what we liked, what we didn't like, to give the officers on the street the best product that it can have at this time. That's about all I have to say. Thank you. Chief or Mayor?
All right, so at this time, we'll open it up for questions, but real quick, I wanted to show you, we do have an actual camera here. We'll let you go ahead and touch it later, take a look at it, put it in the docking station, take it out of the docking station. This is the camera, this is the docking station that is inside of the cruiser, or it's at the officer's house for the freeway officers that take it home. That is how they charge it, okay? So at this time, any questions?
Sure. Basically, during an interaction with our citizens, we would expect it to be on. Officers get dispatched on calls for service around the clock, especially in patrol. They initiate activity that involves our citizens. They do pedestrian stops, they do traffic stops, they make arrests. And so those are the types of incidents where we expect it to be on. However, some of those things end up being in private places. So we often have to do guard duty at a hospital. Or one of these freeway patrol officers might be investigating a serious injury accident. They go to the emergency room. They're in there, they're talking to the victim of the injury accident, asking them questions. The person might be bleeding, they might be half clothed. That camera would normally be on. But if the person is in such a way that we think it's more appropriate not to record that particular, issue of their semi-nudity or private matters that are related to medical conditions and all that, the officer will have the ability to contact a supervisor and say, this is the circumstances, may I turn off the recorder? And if they do that, they're going to be able to talk right into the camera and say, Sergeant so-and-so gave me permission to do this, I'm turning it off now for these reasons. And that way it'll be recorded, we'll know why it happened, but we're also respecting that. Now on the other side, if they're investigating that injury accident that's in the hospital and they're talking to the drunk driver that caused the accident and asking him how much they've had to drink, I would expect that camera to be continuing to roll. So there will be some areas where we'll let the officers, and we're going to do training for everyone, so they'll understand what some of these circumstances might be, and when they would be able to talk to their supervisor and what the supervisor has the ability to use discretion or not.
So, just to clarify, it ends up ultimately being up to the supervisor?
It will be an informed decision in conjunction with the officer and the supervisor. I don't want the officers to be in the position of making that decision on their own and not having backup or justification that we all agreed is there. Again, you know, we believe that these cameras are here for a reason, and that is to get to the facts. And so most of the time, we're going to err on the side of it being in a record mode.
Just to clarify that a little bit further, when you talked about policy, so the policy is what, when should the officer turn it on?
It says, when you're on a call for service, self-initiated activity, making an arrest in a pedestrian stop, a traffic stop, and then even if you aren't in a situation like that, if it becomes adversarial with you and whoever you're talking to, turn it on. So it very clearly states what those circumstances are. And the policy is a public record, so that would be available upon request.
Question for Mayor Ginther. I believe when you were running for mayor, you mentioned that you wanted to equip all police officers with a body camera by the end of the year. Has this process been a little bit more complicated or a little more difficult than you expected, considering the number of people who will be equipped by the time the count flips over to 2017?
You know, what I've stated from the beginning is start the deployment by the end of this year. And so we are on track because of the great vision and leadership of the chief and the director and their teams, and the steadfast support of council, helping to provide the resources to make this happen. So that deployment is on track, and we will finish up phase 1 of the deployment by the end of January, and phase 2 is slated for this spring. So we continue to work closely with all of our partners to make sure that we're taking into account lessons learned from, you know, the great leadership of officers like Officer Barrett and others that are helping us blaze this trail. We think it's critically important to make sure that officers, their input, their guidance, as we continue with this deployment, remains a top priority to make sure that these cameras do in fact what they have done around the country, and that is increase and improve safety for both our sworn officers and the communities that they've sworn to protect and serve. So we'll continue to work on this aggressively, but also in a very thoughtful and deliberate way that we've gone about this initial deployment.
Mayor, what is a timeline that we could expect at this point for full deployment?
Our hope, you know, initially was for this to take place, you know, in phases. My hope is that we are able to have complete deployment done as quickly as possible. As I spoke, the phase 1 will be wrapped up by the end of January, phase 2 this spring, and we will continue on track there to get that done as quickly as possible. But our hope is to make sure that all the officers that will have these body-worn cameras will receive the training, support that they need, and that deployment will take place as quickly as possible.
Mayor, just a point of clarification. Phase 1 is by the end of January. How many officers would that entail?
Around 70.
70?
Around 70.
Why was the traffic division the first phase? Was there a reason behind that and not putting it somewhere else?
Chief, you want to speak to that?
So as was discussed earlier in the remarks, what officers know is what the public doesn't always know, and that's that we see a lot of terrible things, and we know that there are an awful lot of things that happen inside homes that people have concerns about being out there on the internet. And in Ohio, if we record it and it's not protected by law, public records law or redaction, then it's available to anybody that requests. And so we know that once we start wearing these into homes, we're going to see some things that might embarrass people, might open people up for attack or theft or whatever. If an officer goes in to take a burglary report and has to walk around and look for evidence of the burglary, they might be going through underwear drawers, they might be going through parts of houses that show something that people might not want to be on the internet. But when your neighbor wants to know what happened at that house when the police were there and they go get the public record, they get to see the inside of their neighbor's house and their underwear drawer. And so the decision was made to try to deploy these cameras first in the areas where we don't often go into homes and other private areas, so that we have the opportunity to present to the legislature some of the new changes to the Ohio Public Records Law that might protect some of those privacy issues. That's the decision that the legislators will have to make, whether or not they want to limit public records in that way or not. But that won't stop us from recording the video.
Question for Council President Klein. I believe you mentioned kind of some statewide standards. I know there's been some bills in various stages in the State House looking at some statewide standards. Are there any specific bills or specific pieces of those bills that you would like to see implemented here for Columbus as well as the rest of the state?
Well, I think Chief Jacobs summed it up nicely about the reasonable expectation of privacy that people expect, especially in their house. And under the current broad interpretation and language of the Ohio public record laws as currently written, officer discretion, if the camera is turned on, likely means that video is going to be public record, which means that you can get into your neighbor's house if perhaps that is what is recorded. We need changes at the state level to adopt to the modern use technology. And the technology that's evolving in the advent of body cameras, and who knows what technology is going to be coming down the pike, needs to reflect the current standards and technology that we use within the Division of Police to be able to redact private information that is not relevant to why someone would want to request getting the body camera footage. So if there is a way to, and I believe that there is, and someone like Deputy Director Speaks, who's been working diligently on these issues, a way to work with the legislature, and I know that the City of Columbus is a willing participant to do so, but work with the legislature in order to modernize our public record laws to protect the reasonable expectation of privacy that one would expect to have, and take away the officer discretion so it's one less thing that the officer has to worry about. The officer shouldn't have to worry about whether the camera's on or off. But under current Ohio public record laws, that is a result of the standard operating procedures that's now in place for the public record laws. The officer does have the discretion. It would be great if we could run the footage all the time and know that public records laws protect that expectation.